Well, it's a new year and a new me, I guess. But I did get some new movies, so let's just talk about them. One of the new releases I grabbed was Love and Monsters. This is a movie I've been pretty excited about for a little while. I don't know, something about the post-apocalypse I really can't get enough of. Not to mention giant bug monsters and Michael Rooker. Sign me up. Thankfully too, this didn't let me down. First off, this is a gorgeous looking movie. The monsters and the CGI are stunning. Honestly, the CGI in the film is outstanding. It's some of the best CGI I've seen in a long time. Hands down, the best performance in the film is Hero and Dodge, the two dogs who play the main dog, Boy. So cute. Boy the dog is seriously a fully developed character and it's adorable. Everyone else in the film is pretty good as well, but my biggest issue with the film is like the forced villain. Most of the film is a journey through the wild wasteland, and that was the best part of the movie, just exploring the world. Dylan O'Brien plays a goofy young adult that adds a lot of humor and character to the film as well, but the last act of the film forces in this like over-the-top villain, and it didn't need to be there. Honestly, kind of brought down the film and took me out of the experience. Still though, you get some deleted scenes, an interview with the cast, and a making of featurette with the special features. And even though I think the ending of the film is weak, I'd still highly recommend checking this one out. I stumbled across Original Gangster at Walmart. This is a film I've never heard of, but looking at the cover and reading the back, it seemed kind of interesting. So I just decided to IMDb it real quick, and it was sitting at a 8.7 out of 10 with 2,000 reviews, but no written reviews. Something smells a little fishy. So I grabbed it, and after watching it, yeah, it's not really an 8.7 kind of film, maybe like a 5 or a 5.5. First off, this is a fairly well-made film. Performances are pretty decent, music and visuals are decent, but the story has very little plot development and it's full of unlikable characters. Not to mention that nothing in the cover art on the Blu-ray actually happens in the movie. I'm pretty sure the only guns the lead uses is like a pistol and maybe at one point a sawn-off shotgun. Also, he never dresses like that in the film ever. He mainly just wears a trench coat. There's a lot of sections of the film that I feel like you probably could have trimmed it out and you would never have noticed. It actually might have helped out the pacing. I've dogged on this movie a little hard, but it's not a bad movie either. Like I said, it feels like it has some high-end production, and there are some good things on a technical side, but the story is just really lacking. We get no special features with this one, unfortunately, keeping up the tradition that SP and Echo Bridge are pretty bare minimum, but this is a Blu-ray DVD combo pack, so there's that. But yeah, unfortunately, it's not an 8.7 out of 10. A blind buy for autumn this month was Red Rage or Red Devil, depending on where you look. Funny enough, this is by the same director as Original Gangster, Savas D. Michael. Maybe I'm pronouncing that right. Apparently SP and Echo Bridge released a bunch of this director's stuff at Walmart this month because they also had another movie by him as well. Red Rage Devil though is way more enjoyable than Original Gangster. Having about a 30-minute less runtime there definitely seemed to help. There didn't seem to be as much fat on this one. The film is basically a couple different storylines connecting later on in the movie, the main overarching element being that there's a super addictive drug called Red Devil. One storyline follows a man who is super addicted to the stuff, and the actor who played him, Jamie Crew, did an amazing job with this one. It's honestly probably the best performance in the movie. Another great performance was by Ian Reddington, who played Hugo, a weed dealer who only wants a friend, which is another storyline. And the last storyline being the couple who kills anyone who deals with Red Devil. Uses, sells, whatever, because the one's brother's addicted to the stuff, so they're just killing everybody because God told him to, apparently. There's actually a lot of religious themes in this film. Personally, I love the effect they use on the Red Devil drug itself. It creates like this super thick red smoke, and visually it just looks awesome. I can definitely tell Savas knows what he's doing behind the scenes on a technical side, because this is a pretty good looking film. The editing's pretty solid, the musical choices are pretty good, the performances feel pretty well directed, but again, it's kind of the story that's rather weak here. For the most part, the film feels like there's no real plot development until the climax. The only character I felt like got any kind of development was Hugo. I don't know, I'd really like to see this director maybe tackle somebody else's scripts. By the way, I might end up grabbing the other film of his from Walmart. He's kind of an interesting director, I guess. Again, this combo pack seems to come with no special features, and again, the cover art's a little misleading because the older man on the cover with the Tommy gun looking thing, I don't think ever showed up in the movie. Maybe it was a deleted scene, which would have been nice to got SP Echo Bridge. I picked up the new restoration of Satantango, or as my brain wants to pronounce it, Satantango. The film that's over 7 hours long, and man does it feel like it. This is considered one of the greatest films in the slow cinema kind of genre. And while there's a lot of good things about this film, there's so many lingering moments that after a while you just kind of wish it would move on. The cinematography is great, the performances are all pretty good, and while I find it admirable for the director to stay this challenging and to see his vision out, it's not an easy watch, and one that it's probably going to be years before I decide to try to revisit it. As for special features, we get an interview with the film's composer, video essay by Kevin B. Lee, interview with director Bela Tarr, theatrical trailer, and a booklet featuring an essay by Janice Lee and Jared Woodland. And while I do think the film is kind of hard to get to the end of it just because of its length and challenging nature, I do want to check out some more of Bela Tarr's stuff now. My buddy Bear sent me the John Wick Trilogy 4K Steelbook for Christmas, and it's awesome. The artwork on this Steelbook is beautiful. Also, this is a numbered edition, so that's kind of cool. But do I really need to talk about the John Wick films? They're all amazing, okay? All three of these are pure action gold and in my opinion must-watches. I've seen each of these films more times than I probably should, but they're great. I personally think the third film is my favorite, while 2 is probably the weakest. But at its weakest, it's still like an 8.5 out of 10, so yeah. I now have all 3 John Wick films on DVD, Blu-ray, and 4K, so that's pretty cool. And thanks again, man, for the Steelbook for Christmas. I love it. My buddy Mike got me the Arrow release of the Bloodthristy Trilogy for Christmas. This slipcase is insanely beautiful. The set includes The Vampire Doll, Lake of Dracula, and Evil of Dracula. These films aren't really a trilogy as in like the same characters and story, but rather all about vampires and some of the same cast members. The Vampire Doll is a pretty small vampire story, and a man goes to visit his girlfriend when she supposedly died, and then he goes missing, so his sister and her boyfriend go looking for him. And overall, I really like the look of the film. It's very 70s, but uses a good amount of color, and it has some slower cinematography to help build atmosphere, and it was pretty fun. The Lake of Dracula follows a woman and her sister living in a lake house when a coffin is delivered to the boathouse nearby, and soon victims show up drained of blood and bite marks on their necks. And this one's probably my favorite out of the set. The vampires play a much larger role, the characters are a little bit more interesting, and it's just a little bit more fun. I also think this one's a lot more fast paced, so the build up doesn't seem to drag as much. Pretty good. The last film in this set is Evil of Dracula. I guess I should mention that Dracula isn't really in any of these films, but it is rather used just for the English titles. Anyway, by this time around to the third film, the setup is rather the same. Even though this time it's about a teacher heading to a new position at a school when a vampire is afoot. To me, this was kind of the weakest because it follows the same path as the other 2 films and feels a little scarce on the vampires. Either way, this is a pretty fun set of 70s Japanese vampire films that I would definitely recommend checking out. As for special features, we get a video essay by Kim Newman, still gallery, original trailers, and some reversible artwork. Another film my buddy Mike got me for Christmas was Tower of Evil. This is one I've never heard of before, but it was put out by Scorpion Releasing. This is a 70s film about a group of people heading to an island to find a treasure. The island previously had a group of teenagers get brutally murdered, so something's afoot. Honestly, I really enjoyed this one. For one, the film isn't afraid to have some really brutal moments and imagery. I also really love the editing during the hypnosis scenes. Honestly, you don't really see something like this very often, let alone from the early 70s. Sure, there are some 70s horror motifs that are pretty annoying. There's a scene in particular that's early in the film that's just an exposition dump that I found to be really annoying. But where this film succeeds at is the horror elements and boobies. For special features in this set, you get reversible artwork, commentary from Richard Gordon and Tom Weaver, interviews with Sietta Wilson, Kenneth V. Jones, and Henry Richardson, Cateran's Nightmare theater mode version of the film, and original trailer. There's also a small poster included of the cover art that I didn't show here because I wouldn't want to censor it again. You already know what the cover art looks like. It's just a little poster of that. But thanks, man, for the Christmas gifts. I really appreciate it. Sukiyaki Western Django is Takashi Miike's only English language film, and that's probably my biggest problem with the movie. The film follows a lone gunman getting caught up in the middle of a gang rivalry, and the setup of the story is fun, but the dialogue delivery is awful and constantly distracting. I don't understand why they chose to shoot the film in English. It's clear almost all the actors are not native English speakers because they have a very thick accent. This could have been dealt with a lot easier if we just found out they were all from different regions, so English is the only common language, but I just kept thinking the whole time, why don't they just speak Japanese? Like, the performances aren't bad when it comes to expressing emotion or facial expressions, but it all falls apart on how bad the line delivery is. Still though, the action set pieces, I mean, if you're a fan of Miike, you kind of know what to expect, and overall they are really fun, but just keep an open mind when going in of what it will be like. The MVD release comes with the original theatrical cut and the extended cut. I only watched the theatrical cut, and I wouldn't mind checking out the extended at some point. A making of featurette, deleted scenes, sizzle reel, promotional clips, US and Japanese theatrical trailers and TV spots, and some nice reversible artwork. As a fan of Takashi Miike, I'm glad I grabbed this one even if I was a little disappointed with it. I have no real good excuse for waiting so long to pick up Ida. For years I've been saying it's my favorite film in terms of cinematography. It was the biggest inspiration for my film Shadow in Life, and I took a lot of influence from it, which is why it's the pick of the month. Ida follows the story of a young, aspiring nun living in a nunnery in Poland in the early 60s. The nuns decide that she should probably meet her only living relative, her aunt, before taking the pledge. Upon meeting her aunt, she finds out about her ancestry and the effects of World War II. I haven't watched this since theaters, and after rewatching it, I think it's honestly a perfect movie. It's like a 10 out of 10. It's definitely my favorite shot film. Every frame is very picturesque. You could literally print off any frame of the movie and hang it up on your wall. The film's also really subtle. I picked up on a lot of things the second time around. Maybe it's just where I haven't seen it in a while. I kind of forgot about some moments. But there's a lot of things that's kind of said in passing that adds a lot of depth and development to the film. It's a very patient film with outstanding performances. The release does come with a booklet with essays from Iwa Mazaraska? Maybe I'm pronouncing that wrong, I apologize. And Sarah Freeman. On set of Ida featurette. Q&A with director Pavel Pawlikowski. An interview with Pavel as well. This is a film that I honestly can't recommend enough. Next up is the stuff from the January horror pack, and one of those I've never heard of was The Domestics, and it's pretty alright. It's a film set during the post-apocalypse after the government gassed the population, and those that survive live in a gang-filled Mad Max-inspired world. A married couple tries to make their way to the wife's parents' house after they went radio silent. It's a good setup, but with little character development and a lot of scenes that doesn't really affect the story. It feels like a lot of moments drag. There is something I like here. For one, the costumes look pretty good and the film isn't afraid of violence. However, there's moments where the budget comes into play and it kind of looks like the apocalypse never happened. Speaking of which, there's still a lot of people left roaming around after the attack, so I don't really understand why there hasn't been much like order afterwards. There really feels like there's no aftermath from the government about gassing the people. It feels very middle of the road, and for bonuses we get behind the scenes, deleted scenes with commentary, and theatrical trailer. The Dead Room also came in the horror pack. This is a film about a group of paranormal researchers going into a haunted house, and spooky stuff happens, and it's pretty awful. First off, the film is advertised featuring new Rumble soundscape technology. Looking more into this online, I'm pretty sure this is the only movie to use it, because it's fucking stupid. So basically when you watch it, it's supposed to have like this very aggressive rumble sound, so when the ghost bangs on something, it will try to like shake your room you're in. Problem number one, this would have probably been way cooler in a theater or a really detailed home setup with surround sound, but this is also a home release, and I'm pretty sure most people don't have a crazy audio setup. Number two, any movie with good sound editing and good sound effects would accomplish the same thing on a good system. What's the point of using this so-called technology when it can be basically set up without it? Also, you have to watch this weird intro clip for the Rumble that's really stupid. It's basically to make every sound effect super loud and super irritating. The film doesn't even feel like a real film either, it just feels like a tech demo for this Rumble technology. The story, the characters, visuals, and performances were thrown to the wayside so they could focus on audio levels with obnoxiously loud sound effects and false jump scares because, loud sound. It's just really annoying throughout the whole experience, and the fact that they threw everything out the window to focus on this bullshit technology made the film even more unwatchable. They give a warning that'll make you feel uncomfortable, but it didn't. It just made me feel annoyed because of how it was mixed and edited. For extras, we get a behind the scenes and a trailer, but this is one I probably wouldn't recommend. Crazy to Crazy is the horror pack exclusive for the month, and it's the first release of 2020 I've seen so far, and it's not very good. The film follows a loner druggie that can't stop touching himself, so he calls a realtor in guise to rape her at one of her house showings, and Shyamalan, her family, shows up and kidnaps him and tortures him for the rest of the movie. I like the setup and the premise of the movie. Scumbag meets more evil family, but the problem is there's no one here to get behind because both sides are awful people, so there's no tension or hope, and you don't really care what happens. You kind of just hope they all die. The film could have made up for this with some more interesting visuals or intense torture scenes or really gory moments, but due to its micro budget, it has none. Visually, this might be one of the worst shot films I've seen in a while. There's a lot of moments where the characters' heads are just cut off at eye or mouth level, leaving the rest of the frame just their chest and neck. There's a lot of dead space. For performances, the two lead men do a pretty decent job. The mother character is pretty hit or miss at moments, but both kids aren't very good. I want to like this though because even though it has a lot of shortcomings, there's a good premise here. There's some decent ideas, just a lot of poor execution. For special features, you get a theatrical cut and director's cut, commentary track with Greg Daniel, producer Kendall Keeling, and actors Robert Praugo and Keith Brooks, along with trailer. The last one out of the horror pack was Steven Soderbergh's Unsane. I saw this back in theaters and thought it was a pretty fun little psychological thriller. The big selling point of the movie was it was shot on an iPhone. I can't remember what model, but it's definitely not a bad looking film to be shot on an iPhone. The performances here are all pretty good. The film follows a girl who ends up in a mental institution when she probably shouldn't be there, or should she? It toys the thin line pretty well from what I remember. This is a cool one to get in the horror pack because it's probably not a film I would have went out of my way to pick up, but one that I still like. For special features, you mainly just get a making of featurette, which I wouldn't mind checking out since this film was shot on an iPhone. Either way, I do think this one's worth checking out. Shark Tale is a movie I've wanted to see for a while, and I mean that seriously. The animation and character design looks horrible, but it boasts an all-star cast with Will Smith, Jack Black, Robert De Niro, and Martin Scorsese. They give Scorsese's fish big old caterpillar eyebrows. I came across it for $5 at Big Lots and decided to grab it, and after watching it, I loved every second of this movie. First off, this is just a gangster flick, but told by fish because, you know, sleeps with the fishes. As a fan of gangster and crime drama movies, it's a ton of fun. There's even a lot of the cast of The Sopranos thrown in through here too. It's full of all kinds of dad humor and dumb humor, and while I was laughing at it ironically, I was laughing at it just as much unironically. Yes, the character designs are horrible, but they went all in on the fish concept, changing every brand into like fish brands, putting a mole on De Niro's shark, and let's not forget the car wash scene. This is one that while it does have some bad things going for it, it also has a lot of great things. For one, the voice performances outside of Jack Black are all pretty good. I don't mind Jack Black, but you can definitely tell he was trying something a little too hard, I guess. It came off as inconsistent at times. The story and setting allows for a lot of subtle humor as well as in-your-face humor, and it presents some good messages about being yourself and facing your fears. The Blu-ray does come with the music of Shark Tale featurette, which there's a D12 song in this movie that slaps. Filmmakers commentary, a bunch of dancing tutorials, and some cast interviews, and honestly, I really love this one unabashedly. I'm not gonna lie, I was pretty disappointed with Mutant Chronicles. I came across this one at Big Lots for 3 Chipotle chicken melts, and with the cast of Thomas Jane, Ron Perlman, and John Malkovich, not to mention that this is a sci-fi fantasy horror, but man does it look super fake. I understand it's a 2008 film, but the CGI and green screen are terrible here. I did enjoy some of the action set pieces, despite it being super fake looking, but the story is so meandering. The characters are very flat and the dialogue feels like a middle school COD player's fanfic. I wanted to love this film, I really did, but honestly with it being almost 2 hours long, I don't think I'll ever watch it again. So the film's basically about a group coming together to go on a suicide mission to stop these like evil mutants killing everybody as everybody else escapes to Mars. I just wish it was good. For special features, we get commentary tracks from the directors Simon Hunter and Ron Perlman, making of, deleted scenes, green screen and storyboard comparisons, promotional teaser short film, making of promotional teaser, interviews with cast and crew, a look at Mutant Chronicles, storyboards, concept art and visual effects, Comic-Con panel, webisodes and trailer. Honestly, there's a ton of special features on this one. I just wish it was a better movie. I found at Big Lots for like $2.88 or something like that. This is a film I've heard about in the past on like disturbing films lists or something. I can't remember. I just remember hearing about this movie. The film follows a young boy as he finds out his brother is a serial killer and how the young boy deals with that while also being bullied at school. It's a really good premise that's wasted on poor execution. First off, all the performances in this movie are terrible. None of the kids can act or emote, and the adults are not any better. It's shot and lit pretty poorly, and it feels really cheap, but the story never feels like it really focuses on what the center idea is about the boy's brother being a serial killer. It feels very much like an afterthought until the end of the film. Most of the film is just about a young boy being bullied and losing his only friend. Also, there's a film within the film called Headless that drives most of the disturbing factor here. The younger boy finds the movie in his brother's film collection, and honestly, the film focuses a little bit too much on it, and you kind of forget about the movie you're actually watching. I guess they made a feature-length version of Headless, so that's kind of cool, I guess. As for special features, you get the uncut version of Headless, but it's not the feature-length version. An uncut version of Deep Dwellers, which is another movie in the movie that plays for a little bit. Commentary by director Scott Schremer and author Todd Rigney. I was really looking forward to something more with this one, but if it sounds like something you might like, then check it out for yourself. I'm Still Here is a mockumentary around Joaquin Phoenix retiring from acting to pursue a rapping career, and it's pretty decent. I remember during the time frame they were filming this that a lot of people thought Joaquin was on drugs, having a mental mental breakdown or just completely lost it. And knowing that going into this movie does help sell some of the comedy aspects. The film feels very much like Borat or Bruno, but it's never quite as funny. I think the best thing about the film though is Phoenix's performance. To basically stay in character until the film comes out, not really letting anybody in on the joke, is commendable and interesting to see people's reaction to someone who they adored act this way. However, there's a lot of downtime in the film, and sections where there's just not a lot going on. It felt like it could have been trimmed down because it felt way longer than it actually was. As for special features, you get a commentary with Casey Affleck, Joaquin Phoenix, Nicole Axio, maybe pronounced that wrong, Larry McHale, Anthony Langdon, Johnny Moreno, Eddie Rouse, Matt Mayer, Elliot Gagnon, and Sue Patricicola. I know I'm pronouncing names wrong. Deleted scenes, interviews with Casey Affleck and Phoenix, and an alternate ending outtakes. I grabbed Triad Election at Big Lots for like $2. If I see Tartan Asian Extreme at the top, then I'll probably go for it. Unfortunately, this is the second film in a series. There's a film before it called Election, and I believe there's a third film as well, so I won't be watching this one until I watch Election. I'm just not a fan of jumping into a series at a random point. I wanted to get through all the movies and watch them all for this month, but unfortunately I won't be watching this one until I see Election. For special features, you get a making of, interview with Lam Soot, Lam Kal Tung, and original theatrical trailer. This is one that does look really good, so I really want to get Election at some point. Looks right up my alley. The Fall is a movie I remember years ago a buddy of mine telling me to grab a copy of at a used bookstore of the Blu-ray for like $15 or something, because it was either going out of print or was out of print, and I decided not to. Well, it's out of print and super expensive. I was browsing an indoor like flea market kind of place when I was thumbing through some of the DVDs and found The Fall on DVD for only $2 smackaroos. I looked it up on eBay real quick to see if it was still out of print, and yep, sure was. Going for about $60 on eBay, just the DVD, so you know I took it home with me. Finding something like this for so cheap and in relatively good condition is kind of a rush. After watching it, it's pretty good. Honestly, the best thing I can say about the film is the visuals. Visually stunning comes to mind. I really enjoyed the concept of the story. The film is basically about a little girl who's stuck at a hospital when she befriends a man there and he begins telling her a story. The way the real world and the story interact with each other is funny at times, while also being really interesting on how it just blends together. However, there is sometimes it feels like it drags on. It's nearly a 2-hour movie with a lot of slow motion and lingering shots. It feels like it could have been slimmed out a little bit, mainly because you have other sections of the film that are very quick paced, so they feel like they kind of contradict each other when it comes to terms of pacing. Either way, I would still recommend checking this one out because it's a rather original film and pretty interesting for sure. For special features, we get some deleted scenes, behind the scenes, and commentary with filmmakers and cast. A Criterion DVD, yes, DVD not Blu-ray, I grabbed is Jigoku. This is a Japanese film about a group of sinners going to hell, and it's pretty boring for the most part. I found out about this film thanks to Amazon's recommendations. Unfortunately, this doesn't seem to have a Criterion Blu-ray, but only DVD. And while I think the film's boring, I probably would upgrade this to Blu-ray if it gets released because the film is visually stunning. So the idea of the story is to set up a group of people and their flaws, give them reasons to go to hell, so when they die, you know why they go to hell. And the first hour and 10 minutes of this film is the so-called character development. I say that with air quotations because this is probably my biggest flaw with the movie. There's basically no character development. I say this because they're all two-dimensional characters with rather cartoonish behavior to send them to hell. I wish they would have blurred the lines of morality more rather than, yep, he's an asshole. I get that people like this really do exist, but for a film, I'd rather have more complex characters. When they finally end up in hell though, hell is pretty horrifying and gruesome, especially for a 1960s film. Hell in this movie is not a place you'd want to go for sure. Even though there's a lot of parts of the film I found uninteresting, this film did lead me to have a brutal nightmare the night of seeing it. In my dream, I was like a specter, like a fly on the wall. The infinite black surrounding me seemed to go on for an eternity. In front of me, a spotlight shining down on a gruesome scene of a man sitting on the ground. His arms are chained to what looked to be an invisible wall in the darkness, and his legs chained to the floor. Two demon-like creatures around him. One, a black and grayish, skinny demon in front of him with knife-like fingers flaying his lower abdomen. The other demon, a spider-like creature hanging from above his head, scalping him to expose his brain and carefully scooping out chunks like strawberry ice cream and eating it. The worst part of it all was the expressionless face on the man being tormented, as if this was not his first time nor his last time, but rather a mundane Tuesday afternoon. This dream shook me awake and I couldn't fall back to sleep and put me in a weird funk for the rest of the day. It's interesting that a film that I found to be rather lacking affected me in such a way. The release does come with a documentary on the making of and director Nobuo Nakagawa. Maybe I'm pronouncing it right or wrong, I don't know. Theatrical trailer, galleries of posters from Shintoho Studios, and a booklet featuring an essay by Chuck Stevens. This is one I'm not honestly sure I'd recommend or not, I don't know. As I was working on my Rocket Man video, which is up on my channel now, so you should check that out if you'd be so kind, I kind of fell in love with Harland Williams as a comedian. I went down the Harland Highway and picked up his stand-up special, A Force of Nature. This is a special that Harland did in the middle of the desert on top of a mountain with no audience, and it has some pretty funny moments. My favorite pieces are the ones where he interacts with the environment, treating animals and such as hecklers. He also did this special years before not having an audience was cool, so clearly a trendsetter here. Either way, if you like Harland, then give it a shot. For special features, you do get a nature interview with Harland, and that's pretty much it. But yeah, it's not bad. And the last thing I grabbed in January was Fudgy Wudgy Fudge Face. Yes, that is an actual title of an actual movie that actually exists. This is the directorial debut of Harland Williams, and at the time of making this video, I believe it's only available on his website. I ordered it from his website and he sent me a signed copy, so that's really cool. This is a movie that I have to make a full video on, and hopefully we'll get it finished up sometime here soon. I have a lot to say about it, so I don't want to talk about it too much here, but I promise you it's a movie you've probably never seen before. Unfortunately, it doesn't come with any special features, but either way, I would definitely recommend this one. And with that has been the January 2021 update. It's a new year and I have a ton of videos planned, so hopefully you'll check them out and enjoy them as well. Anyway, thanks for watching. Peace.